honestly remember that. I certainly went to, yes, I certainly went to his, when he was elected. That was one of the most electrifying moments I've ever seen. And the hall it was in Chicago. They had a very tough man, Mayor Daley. And Daley run the town like a mobster. You know, everything was done his way. The Kennedys, on the other hand, were the aristocracy of Boston, or Boston, as they say, and a kind of man I don't think I've ever met in public life. He was generous to a fault. It's true. You led us into war, and led America, the United States, into war. But he was a great man, and then when he was felled by an assassin, his brother Bobby stepped up.
Where were you when he was killed, Desmond? When the first Kennedy was killed?
Well, I was in New York. I was at ABC News.
Did you go down to Dallas to cover?
Yeah,
a story?
I did. Yeah, yeah, and I did the shoot, the grassy knoll. See, the way I could have done a diagram. The grassy knoll it's rather a nondescript part of Dallas, but there was this building that actually it was a library, like a 12-story library. So the library is in the square.
In the plaza there.
Yeah.
And then, sorry, I'll move this over a little bit. So the library's in the square, and the grassy knoll. They figured there were shooters on the grassy knoll, do they?
And the grassy knoll was in the shade, and the assassin, whose name slips my mind,
Harvey Oswald.
Lee Harvey Oswald. He was on the something like the 7th floor.
In the book building.
And he had and as the car came around a bunch of trees, that's when he fired and shot the president. It was in an open car, an open limousine.
Now, what was the reaction in the newsroom when you heard Kennedy was killed?
I was not in the newsroom. I was there.
You were in Daily Plaza?
Yeah.
I thought you said you were in New York when that happened.
I'm sorry. I was in New York. That's right. But then I went out to reconstruct.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
And so you did a reconstruction of the killing.
Correct.
But when you were in the newsroom in New York, you're
Yeah.
sitting at your desk and you hear Kennedy's killed.
Yeah.
What did you think? Was it a lot of activity in the newsroom?
You know, yeah. What happened? This happened several times in my career, Gary. The newsroom goes, which is normally noisy, with clattering of, in those days, typewriters and telephones have bells, ringing of bells, and very few people sat down. Most people were always running around the newsroom. They're just noisy places, and but that day, that moment, that minute, the newsroom fell completely silent. And except for an "oh God" or an "oh my God," and then just clapping their heads and how could this happen in America? Unfortunately, violence is woven into the American dream, as many of the good things are too.
Do you think there was a second gunman in the Kennedy assassination?
No, I don't think so.
And it seemed pretty clear that it was just one guy that shot
Yeah.
him.
One darn good marksman.
Yeah. What was the most exciting news story in your career? Like as we headed through the 60s, you wound up in Los Angeles. Tell me how you got to Los Angeles.
I became bureau chief.
Okay, now first of all, you were at ABC.
ABC
which is
News.
the third network.
Yeah,
Then you moved to CBS News.
right.
At what point did you go to Vietnam? Before or after you wound up in Los Angeles?
I went to Vietnam with ABC News.
So that was before.
Right.
So that was the early 60s then.
Correct.
And then how many years did you spend in
Well,
Vietnam?
no, it was the early '60s of
Yeah.
Vietnam. Yeah.
Yeah. When did how long were you in Vietnam for in terms of months?
I was a lot longer than most soldiers, but I didn't die, fortunately, and many of them did. By the nearly 100,000 soldiers died in the Vietnam War, which was called one of the most stupid. But it also produced although it was an American war, Gary, it produced so many brilliant Canadian journalists, Morley Safer. You can start counting the names of the Canadians. Yes, of course.
Where is he from?
Morley Safer is from, well, I don't know where he's from. He lives in New York now. He does 60 Minutes.
Yeah.
I think, it's probably his time is up. They keep trying to I mean, he's got a pension, he's got everything, but he likes to work.
Yeah.
But as for everybody, the clock rings and you got to get off. Let some other people come out and take over.
Your time's up.
Yeah.
Now, let's go back to Vietnam for a few minutes then. So the first time you went to Vietnam, you don't remember the year then, eh?
Well, I should. I think I know very well what year it was. It was 1996.
66. You mean.
1996.
Is when the first time you went to Vietnam?
1966. Sorry,
Yeah.
1966.
And now that must have been a long flight too, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a pretty long flight, but you know, as I said, been a lot longer. Yeah, to get there, I flew from New York to San Francisco, and then overnight, and then I got on the plane from San Francisco and landed in Saigon.
Did they give you danger pay for being there?
That's a really good question. I believe the answer was no.
So you landed. What was it like when you landed in Saigon? Was it a weird place when you got there?
When I landed, it's very, very vivid, Gary. Very vivid. First, the plane was, as it came off the tarmac, was halted. All right, 5 minutes went by, 10 minutes went by, and then people started getting restless. What's the problem? What's going on? The crew just said they didn't know either. They didn't know what was the matter. But eventually we moved on. We moved off the tarmac, and disembark, to get off the plane. Yeah.
Did they ever tell you what the problem was?
No, just some.
So you had to wait.
Yeah.
And back then, it was all of those flights to Indonesia, to Vietnam, was propeller planes, right?
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. I'm not so sure. No, I don't think so. I think there were jets.
All right.
I'm pretty sure there were jets.
All right.
Propellers went out. I can remember those too, but not very well. No, I can't really remember. But in Vietnam, no, there were jets.
Right. So then you landed in Vietnam and you get off. Where did you stay when you were in Vietnam?
Well, let me go from the airport. When
Sure.
I was met at the airport by ABC's bureau chief, and I think his name's Elliot Gould, and Elliot had the company Jeep. It was rather larger, a bit larger than the Jeep. It had been specially configured,
Right.
with to put a camera on a tripod, with a metal frame around, and of course it was open. I mean, Saigon is always blazing hot, and it always has maximum humidity. So you can't wait to get into the hotel, where it's like stepping into an ice cooler.
No.
I mean, it's like a Frigidaire, and then you begin to shiver. You need warm clothes on. All of it's fascinating. All of it's fascinating. But the war brought Canadians into a major role at the American networks. There was dozens. There was, apart from me, Morley Safer. There was many Canadians who did distinguished work. Morley Safer particularly because he is a very sharp reporter, and his reporters have to have eyes not only in the front of their head, but on the back of their head. And Safer saw what looked like American soldiers beating up to the point of near death of Vietnamese soldiers. And he filmed it and lived to get away. He filmed it and lived to get away. Now in those days, we keep saying film, and a lot of your students and other people will say, film isn't that Hollywood? Yeah, it's probably because we shared the same celluloid, emulsion-backed celluloid, right?
So you used to shoot on film?
Yeah, shot on film, yeah.
16 millimeter?
60 millimeter, yeah.
Yeah. And then was it color back then or black and white?
In the beginning, it was color. The war lasted six.
Black and white.
It was black and white, but the war lasted 6 years, as you know. So by the second year, we had color.
How many years were you there?
On and off. As I often say, not really not to boast, but I spent more time there than the GIs who did 3 years and were home, and I did 6 years.
On and off.
On and off, yes. But I'd always come home with the one documentary, which one documentary then was 1 hour long.
How long would you go for at a time? Like, what was the longest you were there for at one point?
I would say 6 weeks.
6 weeks, and then you'd come home.
Yeah.
How long would you be home for?
I'd be home for maybe 2 months, 6 weeks to 2 months.
And then you'd go away for another 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's right.
Were you single back then?
No, I was married, and my wife was pretty decent about it. You know, she had a job, and we didn't have children at the time. And my wife was an artist. She died, unfortunately, a few years ago. But I remember coming home, Gary, after one long trip, and we lived in this place. It was the United Nations. When the UN came to New York at the very beginning, they lived in they were putting it, of course, the United Nations on the East River, but where they lived was in Queens. Most of the people lived in Queens, like I did, and I lived in a 3-story townhouse divided in three different families. I had the bottom, I had the basement, the subground floor, or whatever you want to call it. And as I opened the door, I said, "Hi, honey, I'm home." And I didn't hear anything, so I thought, well, she's probably out. And as I lugged my kit into the doorway, and I looked down the stairs, and I couldn't believe that what I saw was not a regular floor, but a floor painted white.
Oh.
I mean, this is our rent-a-house. I said, when she came home, I said, "Kirsten, you must be nuts. You know, this is definitely against the rules." She said, "Well, rules are made to be broken, Desmond. Oh. Don't you know, rules are made to be broken?" And she said, I've got a wonderful supper. So life went on rather like that.
And what was the floor before? Hardwood?
But
was the floor a hardwood floor?
Yeah, it's a hardwood floor, regular hardwood floor, all painted white.
That she painted white.
Yeah.
Did you get into trouble when you left?
You know, when we left, they always come and inspect.
Yeah.
And then I had to pay some sum of money, like $500 or something of that nature.
So
it was probably worth it, you know, for the beauty of the white floor.
It was nice?
Yeah.
Have you had a white floor since?
No.
No. What your floors at your house are nice wood floors.
Yeah, that's right.
Tell me about the time she painted a chair and then invited your friends over for that party.
Oh, that's another one. Yes, we have a rocking chair. We still have the rocking chair. And I painted it.
No, she painted it, didn't she?
Yeah, I don't. Yes, I wouldn't have painted it. She painted it. I think I know the rocking chair was blue, and she painted it white. So when the party arrived, somebody sat down in the chair and said, "Oh my God, I'm sticking to the chair." And somebody else said, "I'm sticking to the chair too." So people were getting paint on their hands
and their shirt and their clothes,
and their
right?
shirts, and of course the one thing we didn't have was thinner or anything like that.
So your buddy sat on the chair and it.
Yeah, but that's being married to an artist. You see, that's you never know.
Now, so she was pretty good about it. Now, when did you ever move to Denmark, or did you just visit?
That was Denmark. My wife, Kirsten Kleeman,
right.
I met her in Denmark.
But the house with the painted floor was New York.
That's correct, yes.
Right, and so did you ever move to Denmark for 6 months?
No, but I went. I love Denmark. It's such a beautiful country, Gary. And we rented a house, which had a